Let's begin by davening that the zchut of our learning should help to finally bring home all of the rest of the hostages, protect our soldiers and the Am Yisrael and all of the innocents, and bring a speedy end to all of our conflicts.
Amen.
So we've spent now a few shiurim on the sugya and the Gemara. What we came out with are two opinions. We have the opinion, hold on a second, that's a siren. We have Rabbi Yanai and how the Gemara learns the Mishnah according to Rabbi Yanai. We have Mar Bar Rav Ashi and how the Gemara learns the Sugya according to Mar Bar Rav Ashi. So the main difference between them is in the safe of our, we have our Mishnah. It says Chole machilin oto pibikin, im ein shan bikiin machilin oto piatzmo. So, according to the way we learned with Rabbi Yanai, what we came out with is that the beginning of the Mishnah says machilin oto pibikin. That's talking about a choleh who says, I don't need to eat. So his opinion is now not relevant because he doesn't, well, it's not completely relevant, but his opinion is that he doesn't have to eat. So then we would ask Bikiyin, and if Bikiyin says he needs to eat, then we listen to them over him. And the reason being that we're afraid that he's delirious or in some state of mental disarray. And so he can't really make that decision, so we have to ask experts. In the second part of the Mishnah, it's talking about a case where he says he does need to eat, right? And so it says, Im sham bikiin, so according to the first way we learn under Rabbi Yanai, what that means is if there aren't two bikiyin who disagree, then we go after the choleh. But if there are two bikiyin who feel that he doesn't need to eat, then we listen to them and we don't feed him, even if he says, I need to eat. Then we had Mar Bar Rav Ashi, who learns the end of the Mishnah differently. And he says, Imen sham bikiin machinoto piatzmo, means you have to read it as if it's saying, we feed him according to his opinion, according to the sick person's opinion, and once he says, I need to eat, then ein sham bikiin. There are no bikiin. And that is, their opinion is no longer relevant. And so even if 100 bikiin say that he doesn't need to eat, and he as the sick person says, I need to eat, we listen to him. Okay, so there's a big difference then between the two ways of learning. And as we'll see, poskim, Rishonim, and later poskim go after Mar Bar Rav Ashi. However, it still leaves a lot of questions open. And so the first thing I wanted to look at today, I wanted to show you the Rif, which I've laid out for us to make it a little easier to read. Okay, so does everybody see the Rif here, Rif Masechet Yoma? Okay.
Could you please magnify it a little bit?
Yeah, okay, so what I did here on the right side, this is the Gemara, the way our Gemara appears. So this is what So this is from our sugya chole, machinot al pi bikin, which is the Mishnah. And then right after that, Amar Rabbi Yanai. So we had Rabbi Yanai's statement, who says, Chole omer tzarich, Rofe omer eino tzarich shomim lechole. Mai ta'ama, lev yodei amarat nafsho. So if the chole says he needs to eat, and the Rofe says he doesn't need to eat, we listen to the chole. Why? Because lev yodei amarat nafsho. Pshita. Mahu detema Rofe kim leitve. You might have thought that the Rofe, that the doctor, it's established to him more. He knows better. Kamash Malan, so comes to teach us that even so we listen to the sick person. So now let's look at how the Rif brings this. And this is one of the cases where the Rif, as you'll see, the Rif has his own comment. So Michael Schwartz, you'll read Choleh.
Chole ma'akilin oto apim baki'in. Im amrei debei Rav Yanai. Chole omer ani tzarich. Rofe omer ani eino tzarich. Shomim lechole. B'shita sefek nafshot lahakel. Mahu tema. Haida kamar chole tzrikna. Ba'otihu dekama ba'it. Savar ilo achino meitna. Kamash malan. Lev yodei amarat nafsho.
Okay, so let's stop here. So I want you to translate this as much as you can.
Okay, so the sick person says, we feed the sick person according to experts. The house, I don't know how to translate the house of Rabbi Yanai, his students, I guess.
Yeah, so the Bay, when you say Bay Reb Ploni, it means in his yeshiva.
Yeshiva. I couldn't, that was the word I couldn't.
Right, yeah.
So the
Okay, so
Shiva Rabbi.
they said in the yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai.
Okay, so they said in the yeshiva Rabbi Yanai, a sick person says, I need, the doctor says he doesn't need. We listen to the sick person. This is obvious that it's a case of Sefek Nefeshot, the case of life or death, and so therefore we're lenient. You may have thought that since the Chole says that I need, hi to karma, but that I don't, hi, how do you translate hi? Hi to kamar.
Hi is this. Like
This
this,
oh,
yeah, this that the Choves said, I need, ba'utehu dekamavid. So this is the Rif adding in, and he's saying, you might have thought, you would have said that when the Choles says, I need to eat, you might have thought that he's afraid. But utehu dekamavid, it's a fear that he is fearing. That what? Savar I lo achilna maitna.
so he's of the opinion that if he doesn't eat, he's going to die.
Right. So he holds that if I don't eat, I'm going to die. Kamash malan.
So therefore comes to teach us that the heart knows the bitterness of the soul, and therefore we feed him.
And therefore we feed him. Okay, so there's a couple of things here that we see the Rif added in. So here in the Gemara, we just had Pshita, and we had a discussion about what was Pashut here. What was so obvious that we would feed the Choleh over the opinion of the Rofeh. So the Rif explains what's the Pshita, because Safek Nefashot Lahakel. That's what's obvious. What's obvious is if there's any kind of a doubt, we're going to be Mekil, and so we'll feed him. And in our Gemara, it just says, so why is this not necessarily Pashut? Because we might think that the Rofeh, because he is more expert, we should listen to him over the opinion of the Choleh, Kamash Malan. But the Rif interprets it differently, and he says, you might have thought that why wouldn't we listen to the Choleh? Because maybe he's afraid that if he doesn't eat, he's going to die. And what? And a Rofei is telling him he doesn't have to eat. So the Rofei knows he's not going to die if he doesn't eat. And so we might have thought that that's why we're going to listen to, that's why we would listen to the Rofei over the Choleh, because the Choleh is unduly afraid of death. But kamashmala leiv yodea marat nafsho. So it comes to teach us the Mishnah, in other words, that we're quoting, Choleh machlilino tal pi bikiyin. I'm sorry, not the Mishnah, Rabbi Yanai, who says, Choleh omer ani tzarich rofeh me'eno tzarich shamin lecholeh. That comes to teach us, because leiv yodea marat nafsho, we're going to listen to the Choleh over the Rofei. So now that we've mentioned this pasuk many times, Leiv Yodea Marat Nafsho, the heart knows the bitterness of its soul. What do you think that means here in this context? Why is that a deciding factor?
I mean, basically, the patient knows whether he's in danger or not, or yeah, either that or simply sort of the bitterness itself is something, is a kind of, whether it's a sign of impending death or not, it's actually a suffering that needs to be relieved.
Yeah. Michael Schwartz, did you want to say something?
No, that's
Yeah, I think it's more the latter. In other words, because what we're saying here is that um, it's not that the sick person necessarily knows more than the doctor regarding his medical condition, but what he does know better than anyone else is how he feels. And Lev Yodeh Marat Nafsho, right? So the heart knows the bitterness of its soul, indicates that he feels that right now he is in danger. And even if that's not borne out by medical science, we still have to listen to that. In other words, the pasuk here, it's not stam, and this is I think we've mentioned this before. You know, when Chazal quote psukim from Nach, they're quoted. There's a Gemara in Baba Kama that says that we look to Nach not necessarily for psak, but we look for definitions of terms. And this is like a definition. It's trying to tell me something about the human condition. And that's something that I can learn from Nach. And the human condition is the implication of this pasuk is that each of us knows how we feel more than anyone else possibly can. And that's true ad hayom hazeh, right? In other words, even nowadays, there really isn't any objective way to determine some particular person's pain. So if the Cholev feels that he needs to eat, then we're going to listen to him. Okay. Michael Werner, Choleh Omer, Amar.
Choleh אמר, איני צריך, ורופא אומר צריך, שומעים לרופא, פשיטא, ספק נפשות להקל. מהו דתימה, לב יודע מרת נפשו, כמשמען שומעים לרופא, והי דקאמר, החולה לא צריכינה, תונבה הוא דנקית עלה. Ve'i amar ehu ve'acharina behadi
Bahade.
behade bahade lot zarchina
Tzrichna.
zarichna ve'imri tare acharini zarich me'achalin oto al piho pihan
Pihen.
al pihen af agal dechi imri tre kama
This little chupchik here means it's short. So it means the key amrinan.
Teki amrinan tre kamer umer kadre. Hani mile de anin edut. Avagabe umdana batar rov de ut azlinan
Okay,
daf.
stop here.
Okay.
Stop. Okay, the daf you don't have to read. That's just okay. So you read a lot. Now we have to say what it means.
Yes.
So okay, so you read from here. So explain this. Choleh amar ein tzarich.
So the sick person says, I do not need to eat. And the doctor says he needs to eat. We listen to the doctor. Simple. In the case of if there's any doubt about life or death, we rule leniently. Mahu detema.
Mahu detema.
Mahu detema.
What does that mean?
What does that mean? The heart knows the bitterness.
No, wait. I'm asking you, what does mahu detema mean?
What is the source for this?
No.
No, okay.
Michael Schwartz.
You could have said
What it literally means, what would you say? Mahu, what? De is like she, like that you would. Tema is you say. Ema is I say. Tema is you say. What would you say? Continue. In other words, it's what we call elsewhere in the Gemara ahava amina. What hava amina, which is that which I would say. Hava amina, I would say. Amina, I would say. So in other words, it's an assumption that you might have had. Mahu detema, what would you have said, or what would you say? You would have said
the heart knows the bitterness of this of the soul. Kamash Malan, nonetheless.
Well, Kamash Malan means what?
I'm just not.
Michael Schwartz.
It comes to teach us.
Comes to teach us.
Comes teach us that we listen to the doctor.
Okay, so stop. So again, the Rif is learning it in his particular way, and he's saying, what if the Choleh says I don't need to eat, the Rofeh says you do need to eat? We listen to the Rofeh. So we say Pshita, that's obvious, because again, the Rif tells us, because Safek Nefashot Lahakel, and here there's a Safek. One says yes, one says no, it's a Safek, so we go after the Mekil. So why would we think otherwise? That is, why does Rabbi Yanai have to tell me something that's so obvious? Right? He's telling me something that's obvious. The Choleh says I don't need. The Rafeh says he does need to eat. Certainly we're going to listen to the Rafeh because of the same reason we said in the Reisha, we're going to listen to the Choleh, because it's a Safek Nefashot L'Hakel. But what would you have said? Leiv Yodea Marat Nafsho. So what does he mean that you would have said Leiv Yodea Marat Nafsho? And if I said Leiv Yodea Marat Nafsho here, what would I have paskened?
You would have said we would have posken that in fact the Hole really knows whether he needs to eat or not. And if he says I don't need to eat, then he would know best.
Very good. Very good. So, in other words, in the first, so right in the Reisha, when we're learning the first part of Rabbi Yanai, we said Lev Yodea Marat Nafsho. That's Machria, that decides for us, even in the face of what the Rif said is what might be an unreasonable fear of the Choleh. Nonetheless, I listen to the Choleh. So here, where the Choleh says, I don't need to eat at all, what I should apply the same principle. Kamash Malan, so Rabbi Yanai's statement comes to teach us that we listen to the Rofei. And so then why is it that I don't say that Leiv Yodea Marat Nafsho is the guiding factor? Why don't I say that? So then he says, V'hai dekamar choleh lo tzrichna. What does that mean, Michael Werner?
So now that the Hole, now the Sikra is saying that I don't need to eat.
Right. Hi again means like that or this. In other words, the fact in we would say like the fact that the Choles says I don't need to eat, then what is that? Tunava, who did not kitle. What's tunava?
I don't know.
Michael Schwartz.
That was like the like delirious. He doesn't know what he's talking about.
Right. That's what we said. That's from the Gemara. The Gemara says that here we don't go after Lev Yodea Marat Nafsho, because when he says I don't need to eat, I'm going to assume that he's delirious. He's not in a right state of mind to make that decision. So actually, you could put a period here. So that's the end of that. So then, just to make it easier, I'm going to put that on the next page. V'i amar ihu ba'achrina bahadei lo tzrichna. So Michael Werner, can you translate that?
So one one does not.
E means if.
If one says that.
Okay, you're having a little trouble. That's okay. I amar, if I amar ihu, ba'achrina bahadei. If ihu means who, in Hebrew. If he says, va'achrina bahadei, and another one with him says, lo tzrichna, I don't need to eat. And so who is the person who's saying he doesn't need to eat? Who's the evil? If he says he doesn't need to eat.
Well, we've been talking about the Rofes up till now. I mean, the last few lines, I'm assuming it's the Rofe. I mean, we say the last few lines it's been the Hole who's been speaking. But it doesn't, I guess from the sentence itself, it doesn't. No, actually, I would say the Rofe. I would say the Rofe based on what's being. Okay.
Michael Schwartz, who's speaking?
I agree. I think it's a doctor.
No?
The Ihu here has to be the Choleh, and not Choleh, in the sense that we started off here. The Choleh says, I don't need to eat. And the Rof says he does need to. We listen to, even though Kamash Mofei, right after this is a Haidi Kamar Cholel Tzrichna, that which the Cholel says I don't need to eat. That's because he has some kind of delirium. He's not in the right state of mind. But Iyamar Ihu Vachrina Bahadei Lo Tzrichna. In other words, who until now we're talking about who said he doesn't need to eat? It's the Choleh. So if he says, and another one agrees with him that he doesn't need to eat. So until now, Rabbi Yana is talking about a case of one against one, right? So in the first case, the Choleh says, I need to eat. The Rofeh says, he doesn't need to eat. We listen to the Choleh. In the second case, the Choleh says, I don't need to eat. The Rofeh says, he does need to listen to the Rofeh. But now, what if the person who's Choleh says, I don't need to eat? And then there's another person who agrees with him, in other words, presumably another Baki or Rofeh, says he doesn't need to eat. Va'amri trei achrine tzarich. And then two others say that he does need to eat. So now we have the choleh and a rofeh on one side, and we have two rofim on the other side. We're changing the statistics here. So then what do we do? Machilin oto al pihen. So then what's the din?
If you've got a Choleh and a Rofeh saying that he doesn't need to eat, and you've got two other Rofeim saying that he does need to eat, we feed him.
We feed him, right? Machilin oto al pihen. We feed him according to them, al pihen. And af al gav dechi amrinan trei kamea mea katre. We're going to feed him, even though we say in another context we say that two are like 100 and 100 are like two. Hanemile liinyan edut. What does that mean?
So even though in another context we say two are like 100 and 100 are like two, this is being applied to the context of testimony.
Okay. Do you know what the words hanemile mean?
Well, mile would be words, no?
Yes, it's the same. It's like davar in Hebrew. So either hane mili means these words, or it can mean these things. Just like davar could be a word, or it could be a thing, right? So hane mile, these things, in other words, that which we just said about trei kamea meka trei, liinyan edut, as you said. So that's regarding testimony. Aval gabe umdana. Batarov deot azlina. What does that mean?
So concerning valuations or assessments, that we go with the majority.
Okay. What does batar mean? What you said is correct as an understanding. But I want you to learn the words. What does batar mean? I translated in the last year.
I'm going to say that the cancels out or overrules.
No.
No, okay. I was taking a guess that okay, yeah.
Yeah. Michael Schwartz, what does batar mean? Do you know?
After.
After. It's like achar in Hebrew. Achar rov deot azlinan. What does azlinan mean?
We go.
We go. Right. So in syntax, in English syntax, we would say we go after the majority of opinions. Batar rov deot azlina. We go after the majority of opinions. Okay, so what did we say? So what's the Rif setting up? So he says, if I have the chomeh and a doctor who say he doesn't need to eat, and I have two rofim who says he does need to eat, I go, I feed him. And even though I say tre kamea mea katre, in other words, and what would that imply if I say tre kamea umea katre? What if that was applicable here? What would that tell me?
That um, the two who say that he doesn't need to eat could actually overrule not only the two who say that he doesn't eat, but actually overrule any number.
Well, yeah, in other words, it would be a problem, right? Because I have two on one side and two on the other. And so each of them, I could argue, has a solid argument, and then how would I decide? But right, but we say, okay, that's only regarding a dut, that I say that two people, two witnesses, have the same force as any number of witnesses who would agree with them, right? Even 100 or even more. Lo mishana, 100 is an arbitrary number. Aval gabeum dana batarov deotazli. But when we're talking about evaluation or assessment, as you translate it, we would go after the majority of opinions. But even that, v'hane mile b'mamona. When do I go after majority opinions?
In financial matters.
Right. So what does hane mile mean? The
So
same it is meant, it's the same thing that it meant 2 lines ago that we translated it.
so this thing is about finances, money.
Okay, or more literally, these things. It's a
things.
plural.
These
These
things.
things. In other words, we would that. When do we say that we go after rov deotu dana? When we're talking about evaluating something for financial matters. Aval hacha, go ahead.
Valhacha safek nefashot lehakel.
What does hacha mean?
When
Michael Schwartz, what does hacha mean?
Here, as in this case.
Yeah, here, as in this case. Right. In other words, hacha means, it literally means here, and here is the case that we are involved in context. So here, in our case of the rofim against the rofei and the choleh, what's the deciding factor? Safek nefashot lahakel. Okay, Michael Schwartz, continue. The Amar.
The Amar ihu tzrikna, va'af agav da imri mea lo tzrich, machlino tu api etzmo, my tama, lev yudei marat nafsho.
Okay,
Okay,
go ahead.
if he says that I need, and even though that there are 100 that say he doesn't need, we feed him according to himself, his own word. What's the reason? The heart knows the bitterness of the soul.
Okay. So this is the Rif's conclusion. And there are actually a number of questions we could ask on the Rif, including the way he set this up was to talk about if the Choles says he doesn't need to eat and another one agrees with him, right? V'amri trei achrine tzarich, but two others say that he does need to eat, then we go after the people who says he needs to eat. Because presumably because of safek nefashot la'akel, right? That's his conclusion. Lahachot safek nefashot la'akel. But then he brings this now as the last case. This is another case. So if the choles said, I need to eat, just and only the choles that I need to eat. But 100 rofim disagree with him, then I still feed him according to his own word, because lev yodea marat nafsho. So at the beginning of the shir, I reminded us that there were two deot in the Gemara about how to learn our Mishnah. And who is this psak going by? We had Rabbi Yanai and we had Mar Bar Rav Ashi. Who is the Rif paskening by?
It's Marbar Rav Ashi.
Right. He was the last opinion that was brought in the Gemara, and he was the one who said, Imein Shan Bikin Machinat al Pi Atzmo means that if he says he needs to eat, then there are no bikin there. It doesn't matter how many bikin there because we don't consider their opinion at all. Okay. That's the Rif. I'm going to skip the Rosh because of limited time factors. And I want to look at the Rambam. Let's make this bigger. I thought that this, thought it might have Nikud. I don't know, does Safaria have Nikud for the Rambam? Just a second. Because some of the Al HaTorah has Nikud for the Rambam, but apparently not everywhere. Let's see. Just a second. My internet seems to be a little stronger today, so hopefully we won't have to drop out. Oh, okay. We'll use the Safari because it has the Nikud. Okay. Taking away the English. Sorry. But let's make it bigger. There we go. So this is the second chapter of Hilchot Shvitat Tzor. And we're going to read from here. So, Michael Werner, why don't you read Ole?
עולה שיש בו סכנה, ששאל לאכול ביום הגיבורים, אף על פי שהרופאים הבקיאים אומרים אינו צריך, מאכלים אותו על פי עצמו, עד שיאמר די.
Okay, so what is that? Let's just translate. So what does that mean?
So a chole who is in danger of dying, who's somebody who's mortally ill, and he asked to eat on Yom Kippur, even though expert doctors say that he doesn't need to eat, we feed him according to his own opinion until he says he's had enough.
Okay, so the Rambam begins with the case of the Choleh who says, I need to eat. And if you remember the way the Gemara learned, the Sugyata Gemara says that the Mishnah starts with the case of the Choleh who says, I don't need to eat. Right? But the Rambam's starting from this point of view. I'm just pointing it out. There's nothing wrong with it. There's nothing exceptional because the Rambam is going to order this in a particular way. So he starts off by saying, we're talking about a choleh sheyesh bo sakana, and it's reasonable to understand, as Michael Werner said, that this is a person whose life is in danger because of his disease or his illness. And it's interesting because it says, Shesha'al lechol b'yom kippurim. He asked to eat on Yom Kippur. Maybe because other people are taking care of him, he has to ask them to feed him. So even though Rofim Harofim Habikiin, so in our Gemara, we went back and forth between Rofei and Baki, Rofei and Baki. The Rambam combines them, that these are expert doctors. And even though they say he doesn't need, that is, he doesn't need to eat, we feed him according to himself until he says enough. So the Ad Shiomar Dai, if you remember, that was in the Mishnah. That's Lashon HaMishnah. You feed him until he says. Why would we feed him until he says it's enough? Why is that the cutoff point?
Because when he says enough, that means that he feels that he's no longer in danger.
Yeah, so in other words, we're going after his opinion altogether. So his opinion is, I need to eat. So once he says, I don't need to eat, then we don't have any reason to feed him any more than that. Okay, Michael Schwartz, Amar HaCholeh. Ooh, sorry about that. Not used to Safari. Amar HaCholeh. See, I can't do that here. Go ahead. Amar HaCholeh.
Amar HaCholeh, Eini tzarich, v'harofei omer tzarich, maklin oto al piv. V'hu sheyeh rofei, v'hu sheyeh yeh rofei baki.
Stop. Okay, so explain that.
Okay, so the sick person says, I don't need to eat, and the doctor says that he needs to eat. We feed him according to, it would have to be the doctor.
Right. Al piv as opposed to al pi atzmo.
Oh, yes, from the Mishnah. Okay, and that he will be, or he is a expert doctor.
Okay, so you see the Rambam goes out of his way here to clarify this, right? Because here in the second part, Amar Choleini Tarich B'Harofei, he just says Harofei. In the first case, he talked about Rofim Habikin. Here he talks about a Rofei. And so then I'm going to listen to the Rofei to say that he needs to eat, provided that he's a Rofei Baki. This is an interesting clarification on the part of the Rambam, which maybe we're going to talk about a little bit as we go on. Michael Schwartz, read a little bit more. Rofei Echad.
Rofei echad omer tzarich, v'echad omer eno tzarich, maklin oto.
Okay, so what's that case?
So this is a case where one doctor says that he needs to eat, and a second doctor says he doesn't need to eat. We feed the patient.
And what did the patient say here?
In this case, he says, I don't need to eat.
Right. In other words, so the Rambam, as I pointed out, so in the beginning, the first case is where the Choleh says, I need to eat. But then beginning here, Amar Choleh, Eini Tzarich. So now, until this is otherwise clarified, the next cases are all going to be talking about cases where the Choleh says, I don't need to eat. So in the case of the Choleh says, I don't need to eat, the doctor says, you do need to eat, then we listen to the doctor, provided that he is an expert doctor, and we feed him. And now the case that you just read is what? Rofei Echad Omer. Again, so here the Choleh said, I don't need to eat, but what did the Rofim say?
It says that well, one says that he needs to eat, one says he doesn't need to eat.
Then what? What's the din?
Then we feed him.
Then we feed him. Okay. The Rambam doesn't say why, but what would be the reason that we're going to feed him?
I assume it's Sefek Nefesh Hakel. We don't take a chance.
Right. Presumably it's Safek Nefashot Lahakel. Okay, so now Michael Werner, you're going to pick up. Miktzat Harofim.
Miktzat Harofim Omorin Tzarich, ומקצתן אומרים אינו צריך, הולכים אחר הרוב או אחר הבקיעים.
Okay, what does that mean?
So one group of doctors,
Okay,
one
miktsat means some.
Okay.
It's from the word ktsat, like a few. So miktsat harofim, some of the doctors, what do they say?
He needs to eat, and some of them say he doesn't need to eat. We go after majority or after the expert.
Okay, so what does that mean? We go after the majority. First, what does it mean we go after the majority?
So whichever group whichever group is larger, as if whichever opinion has more people behind it, more Rofim behind it, we go after that one.
And what is o achar habikiyin?
So whichever group is more expert, we go after that one.
Right. So so now you see the Rambam, the beginning, he talked about Rofim Bikiyin. Then he talked about a Rofei as long as he's a Baki. And now we have Rofim, and the Rambam says, but we may differentiate between the Rofim, because some might be more expert than others. Continue on, Ubilvad.
And this
Ubilvad.
is Bilvad, and this is when the sick person says, I need to eat.
Okay, so Ubilvad from the word levad, which means alone. So Ubilvad means as long as in this context means provided that, or as long as that the Choleh didn't say, I need to eat. Okay, as we said, so the Rambam started off with the case of the Choleh says, I need to eat. Then he went to the case of the Choleh says, I don't need to eat. And then it was between the Rofim. And then if there's a difference of opinion between the Rofim, either you go after the majority opinion, or you go after who's the more expert opinion. And all of that's provided that the Choleh says, that the Choleh doesn't say, I need to eat. Michael Schwartz, Aval Imamar.
Aval imamar tzarich eini me'aklinoto.
No, read
No.
that again.
Aval im amar tzarich ani ma'aklinoto.
Ma'achilinoto. Yeah.
Ma'aklinoto. So if he says I need to eat, we feed him.
Okay, keep going.
Lo amar hacholeh shehu tzarich v'nichlaku harofim v'hayu kulom beki'in v'ilu she'amru eino tzarich keminyan she'amru tzarich ma'akilin oto.
Okay, so what's this case?
If the choled doesn't say that he needs, and there's a division among the Rofi'im, and they were all experts, and even if they said that he doesn't need to eat, the majority, communion, the majority,
Wait, wait. Lo amar choleh shetzarich, right? So the choleh says he says he did not say that he needs to eat. So the choleh says I don't need to eat, and then nechleku harofim.
there's a difference of opinion among the Rofim,
V'hayu kulam biki'in.
and they're all experts.
Right? Presumably, given what the Rambam said before, meaning they're all of equal expertise. The Eilu Shamru Einot Tzarich, Kiminyan Shamru Tzarich.
So those that say that he doesn't need to eat is equal to those that say that he does need to eat.
Yeah.
So
It's the Kiminyan, they're the same, right? The same number that say they need to eat.
same
Then
counting, yeah. And then we feed him.
Then we feed him. Okay, so in terms of the way the Rambam paskin from the Gemara, based on what we saw, so he does hold like Mar Bar Rav Ashi, because in the case where Abalim Amar Tzarich Ani Machrin Oto, right? That once the Chodesh says I need to eat, then we feed him. But if he didn't say, and they're different rofim with different opinions, provided they all had the same expertise, and provided that the numbers were the same, then I'm mekil and I feed it. Okay, but the chiddush of the Rambam here is that in this middle part, he introduces the idea that the expertise of the doctor or doctors may make a difference. There's a difference of opinion between doctors. I want to look at the tour. I'm going to skip a lot of other halachic opinions. Let's go to the tour. And I don't know if they have, if they don't have, what's the word I'm looking for? If they don't have Nikud here, I'm going to go back to the Al HaTorah website. Just a second. We're in Tzariyach. Yeah, so that's what I thought. They don't have it. Let's look at that's the Shulchan Aruch. All right, let's open up the tour. Or actually, what we'll do, I might have pointed this out before. One of the nice things they have on the Al HaTorah website is they have this option of looking at the tour right alongside the Shulchan Aruch. Michael Werner, are you still with us? Not really. It's okay. We haven't been learning anything, but I see you falling asleep.
I think I caught most of it.
Yeah, but it's not a good way to.
No, it's not.
Don't rely on what you think you know when you're half asleep. I know that from a lot of personal experience. You know, I used to read to my kids, you know, put them to sleep, but a lot of times I was more tired than they were. And
or at least they were more wound up.
And I would sometimes find myself reading to them when I'm asleep. And in my mind, I thought I was reading, but I wasn't. Like, I was maybe mumbling the words, but I wasn't really there. So I thought there was a better way of looking at this one. Maybe I just made it too big. Yeah, you know what? I'll keep this aside. I'm sorry, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but it's going to be easy to read it like this. But it's a nice feature you can use there. You could put the Lashon of the tour right next to the Lashon of the Shulchan Aruch. And that's often very informative. But for the moment, we're just going to look at the tour. And okay, Michael Werner, since I woke you up, you're going to read Choleh.
חולה שצריך לאכול, אם יש שם רופא בקיא, שאומר אם לא יתנו לו
Yidnu lo.
huh?
Yidnu. You were right the first time.
Oh,
Imlo
yitnu.
yidnu lo.
אם לא ייתנו לו, אפשר שיחדד עליו החולה
Acholi.
החולי, ויסתכן מאכלין אותו על פיו.
Stop. Okay. Go
So-
back and explain. Chole.
So a sick person who needs to eat. If there is an expert doctor that says, if there's an expert doctor that says that he needs to eat.
So what does the doctor say? Shomer. Imlo yidnu lo. Efshar yichabed alav hacholi v'yistaken.
So if the doctor says, there's a doctor who says that, I'm sorry, I'm just not getting this.
Okay. Michael Schwartz, you want to try? Imlo yidnu lo?
So if the doctor says that if you don't give him, it's possible that his condition will worsen, his sickness will worsen upon him, and he will be endangered. And
Okay, and then what's the din?
machinin oto, we feed him according to his word, the sick person's word.
According to whose word?
The doctor's
it's the Rofeh again, not Alpi and Smo. It's Alpi, according to the doctor's word.
Okay, so how did the tour began here differently than we've seen before, either in the Gemara or in the Rif or in the Rambam? How did the Rif begin here? What's the case?
This tour begins the cases of a sick person just objectively. He doesn't start with who's saying. Well, he says saying, okay, this sick person objectively needs to eat.
Right. So he starts from this point. There's a chole who objectively needs to eat. So how would we know that? In other words, that's before we bring in the Rofeh. The Aruch HaShulchan talks about this later, but what the Aruch HaShulchan points out is that it's important for us to understand all of these variants of the cases. But what happens in real life? Any of these cases can happen in real life, but usually what's the reality? You have a sick person that we see that he's sick. He knows he's sick. People who see him see that he's sick. And so, we're starting from there. So in a sense, this is the way the tour is beginning. The tour is saying, we have a chole that objectively needs to eat. And so if that's true, then if we have an expert doctor who says, if we don't feed him, it's possible that his sickness will become worse. It will become heavy upon him. It'll become more chamur. The yistaken, and he will be in danger. Once I say he will be in danger, then it would be that he'll be in danger of dying. So the tour is telling us, even if right now it's not sakanat nefashot. Right now he's sick, but he's not on the verge of death. But what does the Rofei tell us?
I need to eat, or I will be in danger of death.
No, not I need to eat. What does the Rofei tell us?
Oh, I'm sorry. He needs to eat, or he will be in danger of death.
Right. So the Rofei, who's an expert, says, look, maybe you think he doesn't need to eat right now, but if he doesn't eat now, then that could lead to a situation where his life might be in danger. Okay, so it's already, as it were, it's like one step removed from sakana, but we consider him to be cholem mesukan for this purpose. Then Machilino to al piv, we feed him we feed him the choleh according to what the Rofei said. And Michael Schwartz. Oh, I'm sorry. Ve'ein tzarich.
Ve'ein tzarich she'amar shema yamut ve'im ein sham rofei mak.
So no, Shem Yamut. That's one din, right?
Oh, okay. So, and we don't need to say that if it's possible that he dies,
Yeah, Shema means perhaps that he might
perhaps.
die. In other words, Ein Tzarich Shilmar. So in other words, once the Rofeh says that he may get worse and he may become misukan, then he doesn't have to say maybe he's going to die.
Yeah.
Right. So that it's enough for us to know that even though he's maybe at an earlier stage of this disease or a particular stage where right now he's not in danger of dying, but if we don't feed him now, then he might get worse. And the Rofeh doesn't have to say that maybe he'll die. Okay, so that's in the case, this is the case of a choleh who needs to eat, and we have the expert opinion of a doctor who says, you feed him now so that his condition doesn't worsen. Okay, Michael, okay, who are we up to here? Michael Werner, why don't you read a little bit? The Imain Sham.
ואם אין שם רופא מאכילין אותו על פי שמאחר,
Me'achar.
שמאחר, שהודיעהו שהוא יום הכיפורים. והוא
Keep going.
והוא ששואל לאכול, אין צריך לדקדק עליו יותר, עליו, thank you, יותר, ואם הוא אומר שצריך, ואפילו מהרופאים אומרים שאינו צריך, ייתנו לו.
Okay. So from here, right? So Be'im Ein Sham Rofeh. So explain this.
So if there's not a doctor there, then we feed him. According to
literally according to him.
According
in
to
other
him.
words, according to the doctor. Okay.
So if there's not another doctor there, then we feed him according to the doctor.
Right. The main sham, I'm sorry. According to, I didn't say that right. The main sham rofei, if there isn't a doctor there, machlino to piv, meaning we feed him according to the choleh, according to what the choleh says. I'm sorry, that was my mistake. Sheme'achar shehodiyuhu. Me'achar means since. Since hodiuhu. What's hodiyuhu?
He informs him.
Hodiuhu. Michael Schwartz, you're close.
They inform him.
Yeah, it's a causative. Hodiuhu. They made known to him. Shehu Yom HaKippurim. In other words, they told him that today is Yom Kippur. V'hu sho'el le'echol.
But he still asked to eat.
He still asked to eat, right? He asked to eat. So who told him today is Yom Kippur?
Just whoever is there. Just people told him that it's Yom Kippur.
Whoever is there, right? And we saw this in the Gemara in the case of the Ubara, where they whispered to her that today is Yom Kippur, right? So this is also true for the Choleh. So the Torah is saying that this point is true for the Choleh, that you remind them that today is Yom Kippur. And if nonetheless he asks to eat, then what? Ein tzarich ledakdek alav yoter. What does that mean?
We don't need to like to just to study, to investigate any farther.
Okay, so ledakdek means to be particular, right? From dikduk, right? Let's say we don't have to be more particular with him. In other words, we don't have to drive this home. He knows, once we know that he knows that today is Yom Kippur, and he nonetheless asks to eat, then I don't have to be more particular with him. In other words, I don't have to push him and say, no, but really, it's Yom Kippur. Like, don't you realize how, you don't do that. You just say, person says they need to eat. You can remind them, today's Yom Kippur, and they say, yeah, I know, but I really need to eat. That's it. You don't reply to that. V'im hu omer shetzarich, v'afilu mea rofim omrim she'no tzarich, yitnu lo. So what does that mean?
So if there are even 100 doctors who say that it doesn't need to eat, nonetheless, we still give him food.
Right. If he says he needs to eat, even if there's 100 doctors that say he doesn't, we give him. Like Marba Ravashi. So we see in that case, so far, all the poskim hold like Marba Ravashi. Just a second. You know what? I think we'll stop here. I think we'll stop here. We're not going to get through the whole tour today. I would encourage all of you to look, if not at the tour, look at the Shulchan Aruch on this Siman, Tafresh Yud Chet. And if you look at it, I think, one second, let me just see how this looks here. I think the Al HaTorah Shulchan Aruch does have Nikud. That's why I might encourage you to look at it. Yeah. See, that's Menukad. So that'll be easier for you to read. I encourage you to go ahead and look at this Siman, Tafresh Yud Chet, and read as much of it as you can up to Sif Vav. Then in Sif Zayin up to including Sif Vav. And if you do more, you can do more. If you go all the way up through Chet, that's really what that's more or less what we've done. It includes some things we haven't done, but try to read through it. And we'll pick up. I want to look at the tour a little more because what we're going to see is there's a machloket between the Rambam and the Ramban about this issue of if we consider the expertise of the doctors, the way the Rambam says you have to consider the relative expertise of doctors. And bear in mind, historically, both the Ramban and the Rambam were doctors. That was their profession. They were both professional doctors. But they have a difference of opinion about that. The Ramban, I don't think we're going to look at the Ramban inside the Ramban, but I think I've mentioned this, yes, in this class. The Ramban wrote a sefer called Torat HaAdam, and that sefer goes through issues of sickness, beginning from when somebody feels like they're sick, and then it covers issues like Bikur Cholim, and then it discusses issues of sickness on Yom Kippur, And that, and it continues. It goes, if the person gets very ill, then he's goseis, then he's on the verge of death. And he talks about that. And then he talks about the halachot of aninut and avelut. And then the last chapter, which we looked at a long time ago, is what happens after you die. That's the Shara HaGuf. So the Ramban there actually goes through our sugya and other related sugyot. He goes into a lot of depth. So we're not going to take the time, though, to look at the Ramban, but we are going to see that this is something that is a machloket between him and the Rambam. And I would like to go through this because these halachot, even though right now it's all, it's sort of a back and forth about if he says I need and how many doctors and this and that. But this is really halacha l'maaseh. This is really practical halacha for all of us. Not that we should ever chas v'shalom be in a position that we're on the verge of death, but people get sick on Yom Kippur, and we have to know how to handle it. So this is, I think, it's very practical. So I want to spend a little time looking at the halachot here. So, are there any last questions or comments? Okay. So, happy Tu B'Shvat.
Thank you. Happy Tu B'Shvat and good night.
Good night. See you
Good night,
next
brother.
week. Bye bye.